Welcome to the Learn True Health podcast. I'm your host, Ashley James. This is episode 309. I am so excited for today's guest. We have with us an amazing author, and I just love her books. Colleen Patrick-Goudreau is such an inspiration. I'm really excited for our talk today, and I know my husband's even more excited because he went vegan at the January. So it's been almost a year that he's been vegan, and our family has been largely plant-based and really enjoying the health benefits that brings. Now, listeners don't need to go vegan or be vegan to love today's interview, but understanding that there's a huge benefit to incorporating this diet, at least trying it, like the 30-day challenge, which is one of the books that Colleen has published, giving it a try and seeing the health benefits for yourself. So Colleen, I'm really excited to have you here today. For those who maybe are on the fence or vegan curious, or for people who just who don't know what to do, but they want to turn their health around, I know that they're going to love learning from you today. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks, Ashley. Really good to be here.
Absolutely. I'd love to start by hearing your story. What led you to want to become the author and the expert that you are today?
Well, I didn't set out to do that. It happened as a byproduct of my passion and my interest and my experiencing the benefits, the mental benefits, the physical benefits, the emotional benefits, et cetera. So it's been a journey over the last really 25 years, starting with growing up back on the East Coast in New Jersey, here in the United States. And I was just, a typical kid who was being fed typical American fare, very typical American family, had a dog I loved animals. I was a typical kid in that way. I always say that you don't have to love animals to not want to hurt them, but I really was one of those children who loved and still loves animals, loved being around them, would get very upset if I saw anyone suffer. If a bird fell out of a tree, I remember kind of setting up a little nest for her to heal her. She had hurt herself, that kind of thing. Just a typical compassion that I think most children have. We even use that as a barometer, I think, for mental and emotional wellness. When a child is kind to an animal, it's a good sign. And if they're not kind to an animal, it is a danger signal. So I definitely passed that test. And my parents supported it. They weren't themselves necessarily huge animal lovers the way I was, but they really supported my compassion. And what I didn't know and started to find out as I was getting older was that I was eating animals and I had no idea. And I know it sounds silly to say it that way, but most of us don't know because it's couched in, kind of hidden terms, and we're not encouraged to really understand that the animals, especially the animals whose images are all over our pajamas and our lunchboxes and in movies and books and all of these ways that we instill this compassion for animals in children. It was quite a shock when I realized that I was actually eating them. And of course, when I confronted my parents, I was given excuses and kind of these things we tell ourselves to really promote willful blindness. And so I, continued to go along my life as a young adult, as a teenager, as someone who still loved animals, still cared about them very much, but was eating them. And I loved meat, I loved it. I loved everything I ate. I loved what I was eating. I didn't know, really what was involved. So when I was about 19 or 20, and I was always interested in learning new things and was interested in nutrition and health and wellness. I was working in a bookstore and I picked up Diet for New America, John Robbins' book that he wrote in the 80s. And it was actually funny because it was John Robbins from the Baskin-Robbins, ice cream empire here in the States. And my father had actually owned as a franchise some Baskin-Robbins stores. So I had just this kind of affiliation with Rob. I thought, okay, what's this about? And it was the first thing that actually woke me up to realizing what I was consuming. So this book talks about the effects of our consumption of meat, dairy, and eggs on our health, on the environment, and on the animals. And it was the first time I really saw what it was I was contributing to. And so I stopped eating land animals and, ate what I thought were products that weren't contributing harm, continued to eat dairy and eggs. And then as I continued to grow and continued to learn and read more books, I realized that there really is no difference in terms of, especially the things I cared about, not contributing, harm or violence against animals. And so when I found out that there really wasn't a difference between meat and dairy and eggs, I became vegan. And I talk a lot about that phrase because I find it's such an interesting phrase because I didn't set out to become anything. Do you understand? I didn't set out to join a club or wear this badge or, kind of reach this goal. I just didn't want to contribute to harm. And there was this thing called vegan. Like, I didn't even know what it really meant, but we use this phrase to talk about that, right? I became vegan. And what I like to say is that I didn't become vegan as much as I removed the blocks to the compassion that had been inside of me all along, because that's really what it was. I wasn't becoming something new as much as I was really becoming my most authentic self without any blocks or barriers. And so that's what started it. And then I just very naturally, as someone who just really, as a natural advocate, I really wanted other people to know. I knew at that point when I became vegan, I had already graduated grad school with a master's in English literature. Writing was already something I loved. It was one of my passions, still is. And so I knew I wanted to do something related to animal advocacy and writing and outreach and education. So I started raising awareness, and it turned into kind of the career that I've built.
Now, you have some amazing books. You have a whole list of wonderful books. For those who are really new to the idea of eating a plant-based diet, would you say the 30-Day Vegan Challenge would be the best book for them to start with, or do you have another book that you'd recommend people begin with?
No, I think that's the book to begin with. That is the book that says, look, just do this for 30 days because we are such creatures of habit. And everyone says they don't eat a lot of meat, dairy, and eggs. Everyone says it. Everyone says it. Everyone has this perception that they don't eat a lot of meat or dairy or eggs, but you really don't know how much you eat until you stop. You don't know how much you do anything, especially these really ingrained habits, until you stop doing it. So the idea behind it is to say stop long enough to undo those old habits, but also most importantly, learn new habits. And so over the course of the 30 days, you're building a foundation, and I'm guiding you through that foundation and answering all of your questions around eating out and traveling and packing lunches and nutrition questions, protein, there's single nutrients that I address, vitamin B12, omega-3 fatty acids, calcium, et cetera, and all of the practical aspects, obviously cooking and et cetera. So it really is the fundamental handbook for making the transition. And whatever you do at the end of the 30 days, that's not my business, but it really is helpful to do it straight on for 30 days. I mean, people, we all have a gradual process. We're all on a journey. I certainly eat differently than I did when I first became vegetarian, first became vegan. But there's a lot to gain when you actually stop something completely. You just are more open to making changes that really have an impact that you can continue implementing.
Now, what I think is interesting is I've had guests on the show, doctors, really well-researched people who say that you cannot be healthy as a vegan. And I think it's funny because I've also had doctors on the show, very well-read, well-researched doctors who say that a plant-based diet is the healthiest diet. Dr. Esselstyn, a cardiologist who wrote the book How to Cure and Reverse Heart Disease. I think that's the title of the book. But Dr. Esselstyn, I had an interview with him, and he, out of all the cardiologists in the world, he has the longest and most extensive study around using diet to reverse and cure blockages in the heart and heart disease. And it not only is his diet plant-based, but he eliminates oil, salt, and sugar and processed foods. So it's you'd think you could call that extreme, but if someone has four blockages in their heart, what is extreme? Getting a surgery or eating, steamed vegetables every day? I mean, really, like, what is the extreme measure? Some people think, oh, I could never give up steak and bacon and eat steamed vegetables every day, but they can consider that a open heart surgery, which, by the way, doesn't cure the problem, it only prolongs, the inevitable. So Dr. Esselstyn has an amazing track record for helping people to gain optimal health through a type of vegan eating. But then there are other doctors that say, well, we're missing nutrients. The body needs these animal fats or these omegas from fish. The body needs B12. We're missing certain nutrients by not incorporating some animal products. What would you say to that? How do we bring back into balance? Because I don't believe in one diet dogma for everyone. I believe in people coming towards finding a healing diet for them. And I really do believe that everyone should try vegan for 30 days, but the type of vegan that isn't just macaroni and fake vegan cheese, like a real healing diet full of wonderful plants. So what would you say to those people who are concerned that if they went vegan, it would be unhealthy for them?
Well, you touched on a little bit of it when people talk about whether or not vegan is healthy. I have a really hard time wrapping my brain around that because you can eat any way you want within the spectrum of vegan, right? So vegan just means you're not eating animal products, but you could eat only highly processed foods and crap and sugar and whatever. You can eat, on that side of the spectrum, or you can eat, only raw food. You could eat only blue foods. You could eat no oil. You could eat no sugar. I mean, there are just so many variations within this thing called vegan. So I think that's the first thing I would really encourage people to understand. There's not one way to do it. There's not one way to eat. Even in a diet where you're eating meat, dairy, and eggs, there's not one way to do it. So I would just encourage people to think very broadly about what it means to eat vegan. So eliminating meat, dairy, and eggs, absolutely the best thing we can do. And then eating as nutrient dense as we can, nutrient densely as we can, eating foods that are the most nutrient dense possible, I think is really also a favor we can do ourselves. However, when it comes to the nutrients, I think, first of all, we're really obsessed with single nutrients to our detriment, to be honest. We are so obsessed with it. And, really, honestly, if we're eating a whole foods plant-based diet and just, not eating potato chips every day, we're getting all the nutrients we need. But more than that, the nutrients we need are plant-based. The nutrients we need are not animal-based. There's not one nutrient we need that is animal-based. The only nutrient we need that's not plant-based is vitamin B12, but it's not animal-based either. It grows on bacteria. So the idea that we have to go through an animal to get to the nutrients that the animals get because the animals eat plants is misguided. We need to skip the middle animal and go directly to the plants to get the nutrients we need. And when we do, we get the vitamins, the minerals, the fiber, the folate, the phytochemicals, the phytonutrients, right, the antioxidants, and we skip all of the substances we know contribute to these preventable diseases. You touched on it, Dr. Esselstyn, the saturated fat, the dietary cholesterol, the lactose, the animal protein. All of these things have been shown conclusively to prevent the kinds of diseases that we have no business getting sick from. We just don't. These are preventable diseases. We don't have diseases of deficiency. We're not, dying from scurvy and rickets. Like, the problem is heart disease, and we can prevent that. And where we can, in terms of what we eat, is eliminating the animal products that contribute to, like you said, the clogged arteries. And so when you skip all that, you're getting your nutrients, and frankly, you're getting them in a much better way because you're better able to absorb them, the nutrients. So for instance, if you go directly to green leafy vegetables and kale and collard greens to get calcium, you're absorbing about 50 to 60% of that calcium. If you're going to cow's milk to get calcium, which, by the way, the dairy industry supplements the feed of cows because they're not eating grass. So they're just eating supplements in their food, right? You could just eat supplements. Like, it doesn't make any sense. So instead of going through the cow whose food was supplemented, you can go directly to the green leafy vegetables, get 50 to 60% of your calcium absorbed versus 30% in cow's milk. Now, that's not my opinion. That's just fact. And that's why the dairy industry supplements their feed, because they know they have to live up to these marketing claims that it's a high calcium food. We're seeing really exciting changes, certainly in the marketplace in terms of cow's milk. I mean, it's really declining in sales. The dairy industry is running scared. The dairy industry is also getting smart. Some companies are buying plant-based milk companies. That's where we're headed. So get on the train now, right? But so that's exciting. So we are seeing some changes, but even better yet, I mean, the only beverage we need, right, is water. Like, besides our own human milk when we're first growing. But go directly to the plants to get your nutrients and skip the middle animal. That's the most basic way we can at least make a huge change in our health.
When we were kids, everything we learned about food either came from our families, from the schools, or from the commercials. And I think now as adults, we need to start to look back at our own programming. We grew up with milk, it does a body good, right? We grew up with programming that, and we have to look back and go, well, are my beliefs around food, like the belief that I need to eat meat at every meal, right? Or I need to drink milk every day. Where do these beliefs come from? Do they come from commercials? And honestly, if a food needs to be marketed to us to consume, we need to wonder, are the health claims true? I mean, why do they have to push and market eggs, bacon, butter, dairy? There's no commercials for broccoli out there. There's no commercials for kale, right? So just looking at our belief system around dairy, going dairy-free for me was one of the biggest health changes, the best health changes. For me personally, I heard recently that 51% of all dairy sales currently are non-dairy, meaning the space has been so disrupted that almond milk, soy milk, hemp milk, oat milk, rice milk is actually selling more than cow milk, which is phenomenal. So, and you're right, we can easily switch from any kind of dairy to a non-dairy. There's great artesian non-dairy cheeses, like, the sky's the limit. But coming back to this idea of understanding why is it that meat is unhealthy? Is there any studies or statistics or that you can cite or explain for those? What do you say to people to pull them out of the matrix, to help them see that going meatless and going completely eliminating animal products would greatly benefit them?
Well, first of all, I want to just touch on the programming, because it is really interesting. It's been done so well that people trust what they're being told by the industries that have the most to gain by their believing them. And so the irony is that vegan authors, nutritionists, doctors, chefs, what have you, are often accused of being biased and of having an agenda and not being credible because they're vegan. And so we have to get away from this notion that somehow eating animal products is a neutral behavior and it's not biased, and that being vegan is biased. We're all biased. Everything we do has a bias. And it's been shaped by our families, our cultures, certainly the industries themselves. And so we need to step back, and I think your question is just really spot on. Just ask ourselves, like, well, is this reflecting my values? Is this reflecting the truth? Who am I listening to? Where am I getting my information from? And that, I think, is a really great first step for people to start just questioning and critically thinking about what it is they know, why they know it, how they know it, and if it if it's true for them. So that's the first thing I would say, because we're so quick to just say, no, it's milk does a body good. Really, who's been telling you that? It's not, it's not the cows. So let's question at least what it is we know. And that's what I really encourage people. I am not a nutritionist, and I don't think you have to be to understand basic common sense, like I was talking about with the nutrients. It's basic common sense that calcium is a mineral, and minerals are found in the ground. We don't mine calcium from animals, we mine calcium from the ground. And the reason animals have these nutrients is because they're eating plants, because we eat the herbivores, we don't eat carnivores, right? So the nutrients are there. I mean, it doesn't take a degree of nutrition to understand that calcium is in green leafy vegetables. So that's what I really encourage people to do, is kind of, again, use their own common sense and question it themselves. There are so many studies. You could read books like the China study. You could read books like Dr. Greger's How Not to Die. The evidence is there. It's compelling. It's peer reviewed. It's unquestionably, credible. So you can read that. I think where we struggle most is around our biases. I think, when we're fighting to hang on to a particular belief, especially a belief that is a conflict, the cognitive dissonance that most people have around eating animal products compels them to just throw out the facts and to just disregard the evidence and to disregard the science that backs up the fact that eating meat, dairy, and eggs is problematic for our health, for the animals, of course, and for the earth. So what we have to do, I think, is question our own desires and biases that keeps us willfully blind to the facts. Do you understand what I mean? So I could tell you exactly why, why it's not harmful, why it's harmful and why it causes problems in our bodies. But I think, and that's helpful. We need those facts, and they're out there. But I think what's really the most difficult for people is really going against the status quo, going against what they've been taught, going against what has become part of their identity, and questioning those things. I think that's the hardest part for people when they're making this change.
I know you can't see me or hear me nodding my head, but I loved it when you said going against the status quo. I've always felt for the last 7 years, actually for more like the last 10 years, I feel like I am a salmon swimming upstream. I went organic. I stopped eating processed food. I went gluten-free, then dairy-free, and just at every turn I started taking supplements. I started going to naturopaths and using homeopathy instead of drugs. At every point, and people around me would question that, right? You go to a restaurant and I start having to ask the waiter a million questions because I want the food in a certain way, because I want to avoid crap. And it's going against the status quo. But if we want to be a statistic, there are the cancer rates are so insane that more than half the population, they expect statistically more than half the adult population will develop cancer in their lifetime. 1/3 of the population is pre-diabetic or diabetic. The obesity rates are insane. The heart disease rates are going through the roof. Like most diseases are increasing, right? And these diseases are all related to diet, to lifestyle. And if we want to be a statistic, if we want to die in our 60s of a preventable lifestyle related disease, then by all means do not question the status quo, right? But we've got to question it. So I like that you brought up that we can be an unhealthy vegan. And I had Chef AJ on the show, and she talked about how for years, because she was a vegan for ethical reasons, she didn't want to hurt animals, but she basically went to 7-Eleven every day and drank Slurpees. And she didn't even touch a vegetable for like 20 years and was incredibly unhealthy. And then all of a sudden she, flipped the coin and changed directions and went raw vegan for a while. And now she's just more like Dr. Esselstyn's diet, which is no salt, sugar, oil, but lots of vegetables. And in 6 months of doing so, she healed her bleeding cancerous polyps to the point where her colon is squeaky clean. So, that both diets were vegan, but the one way of eating vegan created disease. The other way of eating vegan healed the body. So I'd like to hone in on the diet that heals the body. What book do you have that is really focused on using food as medicine, that we can use the vegan diet to heal the body, or learn how to eat this way to heal the body?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to be clear that there's a lot in between those two extremes, and I mean, I've been vegan for 20 years, and as I said, eat a lot more healthfully today than I did 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I mean, you want to just keep experiencing the benefits that you do, and your palate changes. You want to eat cleaner and lighter. But I am not a proponent of any particular diet, because I'm not a fan of diets. And I know it's not a diet in the sense that, she's counting calories, but I do think that I don't want to demonize things like some salt and some oil in your diet, because there's plenty of evidence that also indicates that a small amount of oil, healthful, olive oil, for instance, or coconut oil, does not create the kind of, certainly doesn't have the effects on our bodies that the animal fat has. And so I just don't want to demonize, people who do eat, small amounts of oil, or even processed foods. And I talk a lot about processed foods. So again, this, for me, it comes down to common sense, is that we all eat processed foods. We have to be careful about just our language. We eat processed foods when we take a blueberry off of a vine and put it into a freezer. We eat processed foods when we turn whole peanuts into peanut butter. We eat processed foods when we eat bread. And of course, there's more highly processed bread and less processed bread. So we all eat processed. Eating as whole, foods in their whole state as much as possible is the best thing we can do. But that doesn't mean that everything that kind of goes on that spectrum toward more processed is always bad, right? So my philosophy, and I think for me, my book that I actually think is, again, a common sense approach to eating healthfully, is Color Me Vegan. It was my third cookbook, and it really encourages people to eat by color, because when color is your guide, you're eating a huge variety of types of foods, and you're getting so many different, of course, vitamins and nutrients and minerals, et cetera, but you're also getting all these phytonutrients, and the phytonutrients are in all of these foods. They're in the color. You can name the phytonutrients based on their color. And then what's so fascinating is that those colors and those phytonutrients actually affect different organs in our body. So we all know about beta carotene. That's the one that we all know. Lycopene is probably the other. So beta carotene is a carotenoid that's in orange and red vegetables. And we know that the beta carotene really affects our eyes, and that's why retinol comes from the word retina for our eye. So vitamin A comes from retinol. Retinol comes from our eye because it actually affects that organ. Lycopene affects the prostate. I mean, there's so many phytonutrients that you can just kind of pair up to different organs. And I think that's absolutely fascinating. So you don't have to weigh things and think about, what kinds of foods you're eating and how many fruits and vegetables am I eating today, and, counting calories. But if you're making color the foundation, and kids love it, it's a wonderful way to instill eating healthfully into children, is encouraging them to choose as many colors for their dinner that night as possible. So I think eating by color is really a great guide for people who are looking to eat more healthfully. And of course, the colors in the plants. There are no phytonutrients in animal products. Phyto means plant. So you're not going to find them. I mean, you even think about what buffet of animal-based foods looks like. I mean, what are the colors? Right? They're kind of gray, they're brown, they're tan, they're white. Like there's no vibrancy. But when you see a spread of plant foods, it catches our eyes, which is what the whole point of the color is. And in the plant kingdom, I mean, it attracts their own, beneficial insects, et cetera, because of the color, because of the taste, because of the color. And it does the same for us. When we see color, we're really attracted to it. So eating by color, I think, is a really helpful guide.
Can you dive into that a little bit more? And let us know some of the benefits, more benefits of each color. I have a friend who is a raw vegan, and he was kind of really drained after workouts because he loves doing CrossFit. And I was talking to a doctor who was telling me about colors, and I said to her, "What should he eat right after a workout?" And she said, "Oh, that's easy. Red, the color red. So beets have an amazing ability to help the body rebound after exercise." So I told him about that. He started juicing, one beet. You should not do, you don't need to juice a lot of beets. He just juiced one beet, and he said it was the most amazing transformation. He could do a whole CrossFit workout and then drink or eat a beet, and his body would just come right back. He tried everything. He tried bananas after a workout. He tried watermelon after a workout. Tried a salad after a workout. But the all the phytonutrients of the beet, the red, was really what he needed. His body needed to come back, to bounce back and rebound after a hard workout. So I was fascinated about that, and hearing about the nutrients in orange, like is it the B vitamin? Not there are certain B vitamins in orange things like sweet potatoes, but how do we get like vitamin D, for example, as a vegan? How would you go about making sure that your body is making vitamin D?
Well, for everybody, and this is the case for everybody. And again, it's really important to understand that that nutrient deficiencies are not only in vegans and vegetarians, which is how it's often couched. There are nutrient deficiencies across the board in non-vegans, non-vegetarians. So again, a lot of it has to do with where we're getting these nutrients from, thinking we're getting it from a particular product that we've been told we have to get it from, like animal products, not absorbing it well because we don't absorb it as well when we're getting it from animal products. And so there's a real misunderstanding around where to get our nutrients and how to absorb them best. And that's I think that's something for people to keep in mind too, that it's not just about where you get these nutrients. It's making sure that we, A, increase the absorption of these nutrients, and B, make sure that we're not depleting our body of the nutrients and then we're not absorbing them. So for instance, iron is a great example of a mineral that we need, obviously, and we get from food. And one of the ways to increase our absorption of iron, is by eating it with vitamin C rich foods. So for instance, if we're eating a big salad and we've got, so the greens are going to have the iron, and we have sunflower seeds on there, they're going to have iron. Also having tomatoes, which are vitamin C rich, fruit, vegetable, whatever you want to consider it, or a dressing with citrus, lemon juice, orange slices in there. So you're increasing the absorption of the iron now by including those additional foods. But what you also want to do is not have caffeine while you're having that, meal. And, again, this isn't something you have to think about that hard. Just don't have coffee while you're having your salad. I don't think most people have coffee with their meal, or tea, but they would have soda, right? So making sure that you keep caffeine out of your iron-rich meal. And so vitamin D is an example of a nutrient that all of us need. The best source is from the sun. But that also is a vitamin that goes hand in hand with calcium. So one way to increase, but each vitamin is to have the other one with it. So calcium with vitamin D with calcium. That's going to increase your absorption. Now, obviously, there are people who live in climates and places where they don't get sun year round, or they're not going out in the sun because they're afraid of skin, issues, or they, or they're darker skinned, which also inhibits the absorption of vitamin D from the sun. So really, the way I feel about all of this is, eating a whole foods plant-based diet, getting our nutrients from the plants, but also taking a multivitamin as insurance, because we live in a world that is way more industrial than it ever has been. We have access to these supplements that are, they are saving people, because we don't have to worry about these diseases of deficiency. We don't have to worry about scurvy. We don't have to worry about rickets. We don't have to worry about beriberi, right? So, but we eat differently every day too. We're not always eating the same foods at the same time. We're not always isn't, absorbing the nutrients very well. We're not always outside in the sun. So for me, taking a multivitamin that includes things like vitamin D and vitamin B12, obviously, and most multivitamins will include these, then it's just added insurance that we're getting all the nutrients we need and absorbing them as best as possible.
Coming back to the colors, can you tell us some more fun facts about eating the rainbow and the benefits of each color?
Oh God, you're gonna test me because I've read this book. I read this book many years ago. So I get very excited when I think about these phytonutrients. I think of things like the anthocyanins in blueberries. But what's really fascinating when you think about blueberries is the blue color is only on the outside. There are berries I think in the UK, I think they're called bilberries, which are blue on the outside and blue on the inside as well. Because if you think about a blueberry, they're kind of white on the inside. So most of the anthocyanins and all of those phytonutrients are on the outside of the skin. Same thing with grapes. Those are also really high in the anthocyanins and beta-cyanins. Same thing with the beets. So a lot of these things have to do with, again, kind of basically being antioxidants. So protecting our cells from oxidizing, and that contributes to certainly, cancer prevention because of the cells not multiplying and becoming degenerated and just wacky. So keeping your cells just really, and doing that through the antioxidants, like that's one of the main things. And so that's one of the things to really think about when we're talking about color and the nutrients. So anthocyanins, I think about a lot. What else? Lutein is in the yellow vegetables. So lutein is in corn, for instance. You see it in corn a lot. And the zeaxanthin, I think it's called, is also in the yellow vegetables. And this is what's interesting too, because you're going to have people who say, oh yes, and certainly in terms of the marketing of eggs, they will say that lutein is in the yolks of eggs, right? Because that's where you see all that yellow color. And so that's actually one of the phytonutrients that people will say, well, no, there's lutein in eggs. Well, the reason there's lutein in eggs is because technically speaking, chickens eat plants, and that's where they're getting their lutein from. But they're not eating plants because most of the hens who are raised in the egg industry are raised in cages where they can't move their wings. Yeah. They're getting feed. They're not eating plants. And what do you think they lace their feed with? Lutein. Because they want the yolks of their eggs to be as richly colored yellow as possible. So they supplement their feed with lutein. So again, it's like, skip all of that. You don't need that. Certainly the chickens don't need it. And go directly to the yellow vegetables, for instance, like the corn. And then also all the green, just to, all of these vegetables that I'm talking about where the color is really prominent on the outside. Think about leaves turning color in the fall. What's really happening is that the green is just dissipating. But so the green, that folate, is the strong color all the time in these vegetables. So in all of these colors, you're getting all of these really rich the folate and the fiber, which is underneath all the color. So you're getting kind of a variety of color when you eat green. Do you understand? Like all of the antioxidants are kind of in that green color when you eat the green leafy vegetables. It's one of the reasons they're so nutrient dense. So those are some of the most fun phytonutrients I can think of. But when you start to think about it, it really is, I don't know, you just see color everywhere and you just, I don't know if people sit down and think like, yay, I'm eating my anthocyanins, but it is kind of fun to know that.
We should definitely get your book, Color Me Vegan, so that, even those who are listening who aren't vegan, get the book, Color Me Vegan, go through it, and then fill your plate with wonderful colors. I love that because there are, for example, I believe over 1,000 phytochemicals in broccoli. I had Dr. Joel Furman on the show, and he talks about the power, the healing power of these nutrients in our vegetables. That's something like half a cup of mushrooms a day mixed with some sauteed mushroom or some sauteed onions. So onions, either cooked or not cooked, and mushrooms cooked. Mix that together, have a little bit, like half a cup, which is so small. I love mushrooms, so I'm eating like 2 cups a day, but a little bit of mushrooms every day with some onions, has a massive, massive ability to prevent cancer because there's these phytochemicals in it that suppress making new vasculature, making new blood flow, blood supply to tumors. And so if the tumors can't make, because they grow so fast, they take up a lot of calories. They need to make like new highways of blood supply going to them. But if you eat these vegetables every day, if you eat these plants every day that create this this suppression of new vasculature in the body, it doesn't hurt the body at all. Like the body still is making blood vessels for what it needs to do, but it doesn't make blood vessels, or it suppresses all these new blood vessels that could go to a tumor if you have one. And so the tumor can't grow as fast. Hopefully the body ends up taking care of it. And, because it doesn't have the ability to go out of control. So, and he has all kinds of statistics on eating these foods and the outcomes in terms of disease prevention, which I thought was really cool. And I agree with you. I take a multivitamin. It's a liquid multivitamin. I highly believe in them, just because supplements are good to supplement. They're good to fill in the gaps, but you cannot out supplement a bad diet. And I'm a believer in supplements, but there's no supplement on the world that's going to make McDonald's good for you. So you can't, and just like you can't out exercise a bad diet, we can't, there's no shortcuts, right? There's ways to figure out ways to cook and eat that are healthy and delicious. And what I'm really surprised about is once I started learning how to cook plant-based, it actually cuts down on the amount of time it takes to prepare a delicious meal in half. Now that I don't have to worry about cooking meat and preparing meat and any kind of animal product, it's like vegetables, you don't want to overcook them, so they don't take very much time at all. I have a Instapot, so the rice is like, or the quinoa or the brown rice, or the legumes or the beans, they're done in less than 20 minutes. And so it's really quick. It's quick to make these meals. You can make them really delicious. You can make them highly nutritious, like you said, eat the rainbow, and really filling. Now, for those who, let's say they've never, ever considered going vegan and they're going to do the 30-day challenge, or at least they're going to try like a meatless Monday, at least they're going to try something. What are some tips that you can give people? The first thing that when I first tried this, I noticed I was hungry all the time. What I didn't realize is that when you cut out meat, you really need to start eating more. You have to eat more vegetables and, maybe more brown rice or more baked potato or more beans. You have to just consume more to fill yourself up. And so that was the first thing because I realized, I thought, man, am I hungry all the time? Because I need meat, because my body's craving meat. And it was just that I wasn't used to needing to eat more to fill myself up. So do you have any tips like that for people who are total beginners but want to just jump in and try it? Try just cutting out meat and seeing how they feel. What are some tips to help people have a successful experience of that?
Yeah. So one of the things to keep in mind when you're switching from, we'll talk specifically about meat to plant-based, right, is there are more calories in fat than there are in protein and carbohydrates. So there's a lot of fat in animal products, meat, dairy, and eggs. There's a lot of fat. You're pretty much just eating muscle and fat when you're eating meat. So what happens is, let's say your plate when you're eating meat is a meat-based burger on a bun. There's ketchup, there's lettuce, there's pickles, and you have French fries, or typically what someone would have, right? Then you switch to a veggie burger, and you're eating, burger, same thing on a bun. Everything else is the same: ketchup, pickles, lettuce, your French fries. You may actually feel hungrier at the end of that second meal because you're eating fewer calories. Now, the answer to when you're hungry is to eat, right? So if you're hungry, eat. But what's great about the fact that you're eating fewer calories is, number one, this is one of the reasons why people naturally tend to, if their body needs to, lose weight when they eat plant-based, when they switch from animal-based to plant-based, because very naturally you're eating fewer calories. Now, of course, this is you could eat like complete crap when you're eating, vegan, but we're talking about just kind of a standard, like, right, you're just, you're having salads and you're having some, whatever. But that's the good news. But the good news also is, if you're hungry and you need more food, you're filling yourself up with really nutrient dense, colorful, healthful foods. So that's a really good thing. The other thing to keep in mind, though, is that one of the things that happens when we're transitioning is we have to kind of shift our expectations. So one of the problems is that right now, for most people, especially men, one of the ways they know they're finished eating is they're completely stuffed and feel kind of sick, right? They have to buckle their pants and kind of stretch themselves out. And there's always that feeling of like, oh my God, I'm full. I can't move. I feel disgusting. Like, I feel really full. That is not what we want to use as our barometer for when we're done eating, or how we're supposed to feel when we're finished eating a meal. So the point is that if you feel a little lighter when you're finished a meal, sure, you're hungry, eat more. But what you're going to start to experience is that you actually feel just satiated. You feel good. You feel lighter. You feel more energetic. You don't feel that like lull, that awful kind of feeling of like feeling sick. You don't have to unbutton your pants afterwards, because you're just eating enough so that you're filled and you have all these nutrients in your body. So some of it is also adjusting our expectations, because there are differences when you eat plant-based, but it doesn't mean it's bad, right? It doesn't mean it's inferior. It just means it's different. So that's part of what I really encourage people to understand, is kind of, recalibrate their understanding of what it means to feel full, or what it means, or how much food you're eating, or what a plate looks like. That's also something that happens, is we're so attached, because we're such creatures of habit, to what, say, a meal looks like. Most of us who grow up in, Western countries are used to kind of this main dish with some token side dishes of vegetables on the side, right? That's what we're used to. And so what happens is there's this notion, when you remove the meat, that main dish, that focal point on your plate, that it's a blank hole. It's just an empty space. And so then you go, yeah, this is just an incomplete meal. So I encourage people to kind of rethink what that plate looks like. Number one, I think a lot of what that has to do with is just a focal point. So we can create beautiful focal points on our plate without animal-based meat. I am a proponent of plant-based meats. I think they can be part of a healthful diet. I think you absolutely can base your diet on whole plant foods, and there's nothing wrong with having a vegan burger once in a while. I don't have a problem with that. So, but even if you're making one yourself and you're making, one that's more nutrient dense with beans and vegetables, fine. The point is, having something that even just looks familiar to you will, on the center of your plate, that kind of reminds you of the burger you would have had, or, whatever it is that you would have had that's meat-based, switching that to plant-based, and then still having your vegetables on the side. Now the plate looks a little more familiar to you. So doing that helps also feel that it's not such a huge shift, that it's not so different than what you ate before. The other thing I encourage people to do, though, is also give themselves permission to plate their foods differently. Like, if you think about how cultures around the world plate their food, they don't have it the same way as, North Americans do, or Western people in Western cultures do, right? They don't have this like centerpiece of meat and then side dishes. If you think of Indian food or Asian foods, lots of different Asian cuisines, Southeast Asian, Thai, Vietnamese, Burmese, Chinese, Japanese, they don't have the same construct as we do. So some of it is also kind of recalibrating what a plate looks like, and giving yourself permission to just have, rice and lentils on your plate with, again, some vegetables. So a lot of it has to do with changing our minds, not just changing our habits and the choices we're making. And I also talk a lot about the fact that it's not meat we crave. When people say they're hungry, they're lacking calories, so have more food, right? But when people say they're craving meat, we're not craving meat. We're not obligate carnivores. We do not crave the flesh of other animals. If we did, it would be a very strange world of all of us walking around as birds flew by and squirrels running past and deer grazing on the side. We'd all be, crouching down and dilating our eyes and jumping on. That's not what we do. Like, we don't crave flesh, but what we do crave is fat, salt, flavor, familiarity, as I mentioned, and texture. So those are the things I encourage people to say, oh, gosh, I really want a burger, but maybe it's not like this meat burger that I want. Maybe it's just some fat. Maybe it's just some salt. Maybe it's just this familiar thing on a bun. So that's one way to guide that people can kind of use as a guide for transitioning, so that, again, it doesn't feel so unfamiliar, and so you don't feel like you're lacking something, but that you understand what's underneath what we think is, what we want. It's usually, if it's cheese, we're craving cheese. Well, it could be something, could again be fat or salt, could be something creamy. It could be something with umami, like a bite, a certain sharpness that we're used to when we have a certain kind of cheese, right? So there's all those ways to get the fat, salt, flavor, texture, and familiarity from plant foods. We just have to kind of, again, just recalibrate our minds.
Well said. You mentioned making your own veggie burgers, and I made it my mission after my husband went vegan, and he went like 180. We've been married for 10 years, and he was the biggest meat eater. He would have meals that would only be meat. Just put meat on the plate. That's all he would eat. And he just went switch. Beginning of the year, no meat, no animal products ever again. It just, everything clicked in his mind, and he just went cold turkey. Well, cold no turkey. And it's been amazing to see that. And of course, me, I'm easing into it. And and you're right. The second you cut out something, you cannot believe I couldn't believe how much meat I ate until I stopped eating it. It was just like amazing. And so I started making our own veggie burgers. And I came up with the best ones for me. So I'll tell you the recipe's really easy. I make some Instapot quinoa. I use a bit of extra water so it's sort of mushy, like, sticky. Get some riced cauliflower and chickpeas. And so you can either, chickpeas or garbanzo beans. You could either make your own or get the canned ones, organic, as much as possible. And then mix the three together, just mash them together with some Tex-Mex. And then I make them into they're kind of a cross between a cookie and a burger patty. It's they kind of shrink in the oven, so they become a little bit flat. I like to make them sort of thinner than a real burger because that way they get a little crispy and just it cooks much better. So I bake them in the oven until they hold together and they have a little bit of crispness, like I said, like a cookie. And then we take raw purple cabbage and cut it up so that it's big enough for like a bun, and then slice up some avocado, and then sometimes I have like a mango salsa, but so you do, and some garlic chili sauce. So those are the condiments that we use on the side, but you don't have to use them. And so, so then we have the purple cabbage that's raw, at holding it like a taco or like a bun, and put in the homemade burger, and then adding the avocado and maybe sometimes the garlic chili sauce or the mango salsa, and it crunches, but it also has that little fatty from the avocado, and it has a little bit of crunch, and all the flavors just explode in your mouth. So I made this entire batch, and I thought, like a huge batch, and I thought, okay, this is enough for all three of us for dinner. I was figuring it was enough. And I left it on the stove to cool off because I took it out of the oven, and it was around lunchtime, and I thought, okay, this is going to be dinner. So I've got dinner done. It's great. And my husband goes to the kitchen. He goes, hey, can I have some of this? I'm like, yeah, sure. And I come in to the kitchen to prepare dinner, and it's all gone. He polished the whole thing off, which is fine because I had to make more, but I just thought it was so funny that it was so delicious. He's like, and he said to me within days of going vegan, because I'm a good cook. I figure out how to make stuff taste good. But he goes, if you had told me vegan tasted this good, I would have gone vegan a long time ago. So it's fun. It's fun to play around with flavors. I like to use a lot of coconut milk and curry. But I'm always wanting to learn how to make delicious plant-based meals. Out of all your books, what's the one that gives us sort of the most fun, adventurous recipes for those who are sort of really bored with their own plant-based recipes?
Well, fun, but also familiar. I would say The Vegan Table. So that is my second cookbook. And it was based on recipes that I taught for 10 years in my cooking classes. And, my recipes are very much about, this is not so different than what you're already familiar with. It's about fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds and beans and grains and mushrooms and herbs and spices. Like, those are all things that people have and people love. And it's not, when we take those things out of the box called vegan, then we go, oh, yeah, I already eat vegan. I just didn't call it vegan, right? So I eat fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds and beans and mushrooms and grains and herbs and spices. So just taking it out of that box called vegan makes it so much more familiar. So my recipes are very much based on familiar ingredients. You don't have to go to a specialty store. Now, there are some ingredients that are going to be new to you because maybe you've been cooking the same way all your life. And so there might be some new ingredients that feel exotic, but generally speaking, all of my ingredients can be found in, general grocery stores. So the Vegan Table has recipes for, any night of the week, but I also, talking before about kind of plating our foods, people also kind of need to know, like, what do you pair things with? Because it feels so different. So I have, menus and menus that guide people, and then also for holidays. So the book is broken up so that you can cook either for, every night, for 2 people, it could be for a dinner party of 6 people. I have recipes in there for holidays and for parties so that you make finger food. So there's lots of really great recipes, a variety of recipes, but things you could whip up very quickly. But I want to say something about that because we all want things to be fast. And I do too. I do not make my recipes so that you're standing in the kitchen for 2 hours. Like, that's not the point, unless you want to and just make it a whole experience. But the point is to make a healthful, delicious meal so that you're getting on with your life. But I also encourage people to kind of recalibrate how much time they think they should spend in the kitchen. Because right now, our threshold is about 0. So any more time than 0 people spend in 0 minutes in the kitchen, they think is too much, right? So we're so used to this fast food and processed food and packaged food and just putting something in the microwave. So I really encourage people to just kind of reprioritize and say, it's not unreasonable to spend 15 or 30 minutes a day, like making healthful foods for ourselves and for our families and nurturing ourselves and nourishing our bodies. Like, that's reasonable. But there still are things you can do to make things move along quickly so that you don't feel overwhelmed. Everyone's busy. I get that everyone's busy, but so there are things you can do to move things along. First of all, I want to say that I don't have an Instapot, but I have a pressure cooker. Changed my life. And I was already I'm a cook. I love to cook. I don't mind spending some time in the kitchen cooking. I was a confident. It changed my life. And it's only been a few years since I've had the pressure cooker. So, you don't have to go out and buy fancy equipment and things, and appliances that take up counter space. But honestly, that is one of the appliances I highly recommend people invest in that you will use all the time. So whether or not you have a pressure cooker, one of the ways to kind of move things along and not feel so overwhelmed by it is plan in advance. That doesn't take time. That just takes thinking. So I think every night we should know what we're having for dinner the next night so that maybe you're making more for Wednesday night because you want to, you're not going to have time to cook on Thursday. So you want to have leftovers on Thursday. So you're always thinking ahead. How much can I make right now? Apparently it wouldn't work in your house with your husband around because he'll eat all the food. But generally speaking, you want to have, some kind of plan so that you've got something for the next day. If you're thinking about what to cook for the next day, maybe while you're cleaning up the kitchen from Wednesday night's dinner, you're putting something in the Instapot or on the stove to make some rice or quinoa for the next day. And then the next morning, maybe you chop up some vegetables before you go to work so that when you come home, now you've got the rice made or the quinoa made, you've got some vegetables chopped up, and now you're just going to put it together as a stir fry or whatever. So I do think always planning in advance and just thinking ahead, especially for dinners, maybe not as much for lunches, and you pack some lunches and maybe not for breakfast. But I think for dinners, we should always know in advance what we're having the next night. I don't think we should ever decide what to have for dinner at dinner time. We don't make the best decisions. We're just hungry. We might be hangry. We might be irritable. We might be, low energy. And all we're going to want is to shove food in our mouths. And so that's not the best way to go about eating healthfully. So planning in advance definitely makes a huge difference. And then, just learning some new recipes, rotating your repertoire. We all get sick of the same things. It's not a vegan issue. We all rotate the same foods again and again. So just kind of infusing some new recipes into your rotation and then making that part of your rotation. I think people should have a handful of recipes that they know really well that they can just throw together very easily is really helpful. And then we'll rotate them for a while until we get sick of those and we can rotate in some more.
I love it. I want to get better at that. I've been learning how to do that, how to sort of prep some food. So think about the foods that take a longer time, like your beans and your lentils and your rice. That just, it just takes, even if you have an Instapot, that takes time.
Mm-hmm.
And then chopping up the vegetables takes time. So good. You're right. When we come home and we are hungry, the last thing we want to do is spend 10 minutes prepping vegetables. We're hungry. We just want to eat. And so thinking of the foods that we could make in advance just to have, I had someone on the show, I think it was Robin Openshaw or JJ Virgin. I can't remember, but both of them are so similar in my mind, but that they would always prepare a bunch of raw veggies to snack on, and they almost like a salad, and they throw it on a table while they prepped dinner. And so all their kids would come home and their kids would just grab a celery stick, grab some slices of apple, grab the carrot stick, grab the raw broccoli or the raw mushrooms or whatever. Just it's a big sort of raw platter that everyone would snack on. And maybe there's a hummus or a guac dip, but that everyone snacked on it for like a half an hour while she got dinner together. And I love that idea to always sort of have something like just carrot sticks. You can just snack on them. That's going to bring down the hunger and make you make better choices when it comes to cooking dinner. What I like to do is bake sweet potatoes. You can get the purple sweet potatoes that are really rich in antioxidants, or you can get the, there's all kinds of different kinds of, quote unquote sweet potatoes or yams. Doesn't have to just be the rustic potato. I love that there's so many more nutrients in these colorful potatoes, and I bake a huge thing of them. Just fill the oven and I bake it. I do that like once every 2 weeks, and then I let them cool off and I put them in the fridge. And my fridge always has some baked sweet potatoes, so I can grab it and we can do stuffed potatoes for one night for dinner, or I can make a mash. I even take sweet potatoes, and my son, who's almost 4 years old, loves this. He loves helping me make it. I mash it in the food processor with a little bit of almond milk or coconut milk, some raw cacao, and that's it. I don't even have to add stevia, and it becomes a thick chocolate pudding, and he will eat that sometimes for dinner. And I'm like, fine, you can have as much of that as you want, because the sweet potato makes it sweet. He's eating, like, I know there's so many good nutrients in a sweet potato, and he feels like he's eating chocolate for dinner. So it's fun. We can have fun with this. But I love having the sweet potatoes already made and baked in the fridge, because sometimes I'm so hungry, I just run in between interviews and I just eat half a sweet potato, and that really fills me up, and it's delicious. But yeah, I always, whenever I make brown rice or quinoa, I always make enough for like 3 meals. And so that's just always in the fridge. And then you can shop very affordably, like something like Costco. They have a lot of organic foods, and I get the huge bag of mixed super greens for $5. I always have that on hand to make a really quick salad. So just playing around with preparing ahead of time. Can you give us, what are some ways that you prepare ahead of time, or can you give us some recipes that are your sort of go-to recipes that are delicious and quick?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to say, when you're coming home from the grocery store, first of all, with any of these vegetables, right, it's it's related to planning in advance, but it's also one of those things that what happens is we come home with all these vegetables. We're very excited to eat healthfully. We put them in the refrigerator, and then we come down to make dinner and we look at everything and we go, there's nothing to eat. It's going to take me forever to chop these vegetables, and I don't want to chop these vegetables. And then we just close the refrigerator. So what I recommend, and you alluded to it when you're talking about even just chopping up the carrots, is before you put everything in your refrigerator, take some time, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, have a good sharp knife and good cutting board, and just cut some of those things. So take your broccoli and turn it into little florets, right? So chop off the stem, chop them up, put them in a container, put them in your refrigerator. Take your cauliflower, cut it into florets, put it in the refrigerator. Carrots, chop some up, put them in a container so you can snack on them, have them for dinner, whatever. Onion, same thing. Or when you're making a recipe and it calls for an onion, chop 2 onions, put one in the refrigerator, put one in your recipe, or garlic, or peppers, or whatever it is you're doing. Lettuce is a little different just because, it'll start to oxidize. So, if you have just a bag of the green leafies, that's fine. But doing something so that you make those vegetables transformed into an edible state, because otherwise we see the broccoli that's in the bunch or the carrots with their tops on, and we just think it's going to take forever to chop them. And then we wonder why our refrigerators have turned into compost bins. So chop them in advance so that when you open the refrigerator, you see everything that's actually now you can eat or very easily transform into a meal. So I'm always doing those kinds of things, and I'm kind of always one step ahead. My favorite recipes, a lot of my favorite recipes are stews and soups and kind of one dish foods, especially in the winter and fall. I just really like soups. I think soups are great for any time of the year. One soup that I'll actually put together very quickly, it's kind of one of those things where if it is a last minute thing and I haven't taken my advice and planned in advance, is miso soup. It is something that is so conducive to lots of different kinds of vegetables, and it's so easy to make. So just having miso paste is one of those things I really recommend people have in the refrigerator at all times, because you can whip up a miso soup very quickly, but you can also whip up miso dressing. That's a really nice dressing for any kind of vegetable. So, you can steam vegetables and then just drizzle your miso dressing on it, or you can roast vegetables and drizzle some miso dressing, or you can use it to make miso soup. So I'll often saute some vegetables first in a pot, like onions and garlic and carrots, I think go really beautifully with the miso. And then throw in my miso paste and water and just, whisk it until you've got a nice smooth broth. And then once it's cooked, because it's really all you're doing is heating up the miso with the water, then you can also add things like broccoli. You don't want to overcook the broccoli, so I wouldn't put it in much sooner. But you see what I mean? Just kind of a quick base, and then you're adding just a ton of vegetables. And then you can also even you serve it over something like quinoa or over grains, so it can be kind of even a heartier soup. So that's something that I make a lot. I do make a lot of bean dishes just because, again, I love my pressure cooker so much and it's so easy. Lentils or beans to just kind of throw into the pressure cooker, cook them in no time. I mean, for people who don't know, and I was so naive when it came to pressure cookers. I had no idea. And so I used to really encourage people to cook beans from scratch just because they're just more flavorful than canned beans. But I bought canned beans. But one of the things I did in January of this year is really reduced my own waste. And so, going low waste and zero waste in terms of things that I purchase, et cetera. So and actually even before I became zero waste, years ago, I actually decided I don't want to buy cans anymore. Even though aluminum is 100% recyclable, I just really wanted to reduce the amount of stuff that I was even creating as recyclables. So the pressure cooker just changed everything for me, because even though I would encourage people to cook beans from scratch, you're not standing around watching them while they soak, just put them on, let them soak while you're sleeping. Still, I have to say that having the pressure cooker that enables you to cook the beans without even soaking them, and they're the most flavorful beans I've ever had in my life, like just cooked in the pressure cooker, without even just any flavoring. They're the most flavorful. So now when I have canned chickpeas, and I love chickpeas, my husband and I eat chickpeas several times a week, I can tell they're canned. I can tell the difference. So it just really changed everything. So I make a lot of bean dishes, chilies. But I make my own corn tortillas, which take no time at all. But even if you're buying store-bought, just having some pinto beans and, kind of putting together a station of, rice and beans and salsas. You mentioned the mango salsa, which is fabulous, avocado, just putting that all together. I like those kinds of meals that you can just, kind of add a bunch of things to. One recipe that was probably one of my most popular, and it's the thing that surprises them the most. It's a great snack for kids. It's a great quick lunch. It's a great snack for adults. Is I make my no queso quesadillas. So you take a tortilla. It could be a wheat tortilla, it could be a gluten-free tortilla or a corn tortilla. And you take hummus and you spread hummus on the top of the tortilla. And then you put the tortilla in a nonstick pan, no oil or anything, obviously hummus side up. And then you place another tortilla on top. Oh, actually, before then, you can even start filling it with green onions or olives or sun-dried tomatoes or whatever you want to kind of put on there. You don't want to overfill it because you don't want to make it too hard to turn or cut. But then you put the tortilla on top of it and you let that bottom tortilla brown. And then you flip it over and let the other side brown. And what happens when that hummus gets warm is unbelievable. And so people who, are kind of used to the cheese, they have this. And I'm not trying to mimic cheese, dairy-based cheese. It's not melting, it's not pulling, but it's just really satisfying. And it has that really satisfying mouthfeel and it's creamy. But something changes when it's hot. And the salsa on top, if you put salsa on top as well, it's amazing. So that's one of those things that, that doesn't take any time at all to just whip up. And it's a great quick meal, quick snack.
I love what you said about having some miso around. I was recently turned on to Miso Master is the brand, organic chickpea miso.
Mm-hmm.
It's soy free and gluten free. So I'm gluten free, and I'm allergic to soy. But I have loved miso. I actually used to, back when my mom had cancer, in my early 20s, I learned from a macrobiotic chef how to cook for her, and we extended her life a little longer because she was eating healthier. So I was making a lot of miso soups with they're practically stews because I would cut up the different squashes and different vegetables and put it in and then simmer it in the water, and then you turn off the heat and then you add the miso and you mix it together. And of course I had all the different kinds of seaweed in there. But when I found out that I couldn't eat soy anymore, I've been missing miso. And so my godmother turned me on to the most delicious. It's gluten free because they don't have any barley, wheat, or rye in it, and it's basically fermented chickpea. It's so delicious. It's very sweet. And so that's in my fridge. And when I need a snack at night, but I don't want to eat another meal. I don't want to eat a second dinner, but I wanted a snack. I'll just heat up some water and put a scoop of miso paste in there and stir it up and sip it like a tea. And it is really satisfying and filling and delicious. But I love what you said, that you could go one step further and chop up some vegetables and simmer them and then add the miso to that. And boom, you've got a delicious, nutritious soup. I wanted to bring up protein because I think a lot of people freak out about it. I've had other guests on the show talk about how easy it is to get protein from the plant-based diet. When we look at these gorgeous cows and that are rippling with muscle, we have to remember that where they got their protein from was plants. And so we can do the same. Lentils, if you cook 1 cup of lentils and eat 1 cup of cooked lentils. I just Googled it right now to remind myself, it's 18 grams of protein and 16 grams of dietary fiber. I mean, that is a ton of protein, and I love lentils. I add them. I just throw a cup on anything. Just, you can throw them in a salad. The chilies you talked about, the soups you talked about, any kind of stir fry. I pretend like lentils are ground beef basically, and I just add it to everything like you'd add ground beef to anything. Those kind of quesadillas you talked about, I've added lentils to those. Oh, just so delicious. And you can take any kind of spice and to when you make your lentils. So, if someone is used to like a Tex-Mex or used to an Italian seasoning or used to a Greek seasoning or an Asian seasoning, I mean, the list goes on and on. You can really explore the palate with a variety of lentils, and you're getting your protein and your fiber and all those phytonutrients. um it's so much healthier. It's just more nutrient dense than eating animals. So it sounds like the wiser choice when it comes down to it.
Yeah, for sure. And, just to touch on something else you said about all the flavor that you're talking about, that's all in the spices and the herbs, and having some of those things in your cupboard. I mean, most people have spices in their kitchen, but they have dust collecting on those spices and they've had them for 5 years, 10 years, right? And then they're like, well, my food's really bland. Well, because you're not using your spices. So use your spices, use your dried herbs, and then obviously fresh herbs. But also in the refrigerator, have some of those condiments. And, when you get meat, dairy, and eggs out of your diet, your palate is also so much more sensitive to subtle flavors that when they're coated with fat and salt, our palates just can't recognize and appreciate the subtle flavors. So you're talking about these lentils and using them like ground beef, brown lentils, green lentils. They're called brown lentils some places, green lentils elsewhere. But they're really smoky and they're really meaty, and they have such beautiful flavor. Like most people don't know that because they just are just bombarding their palates with the fat from the meat, dairy, and eggs. And so those are the kinds of things that's really exciting that you start to really appreciate. And having some condiments, like I said, the flavors on the plant foods. We flavor our meat with plants. We put ketchup and relish and mustard and chutneys and onions and garlic on our burgers and relish and on our hot dogs. I mean, it's the flavors in the plants. So having some condiments, like obviously the obvious ones that we would have, but things like tamari, soy sauce, or we said the miso, or hoisin sauce, or just all of those wonderful, hot sauces, just things so that it's just going to add like instant flavor to whatever it is you're making. And you don't have to, all of the different spices have, they're kind of associated with different cultures and countries, right? So you can become so adept at, Indian cuisine by using some of, the Indian spices and curries, and you can become adept at the Southeast Asian by doing the same. Mexican, it doesn't have to be different from what you're already used to, because the flavor really comes from the plants, all of those things. And then if you're making Mexican food, then your creaminess or your coolness is going to come from, an avocado or the guacamole or cashew cream you can make yourself, or those commercial sour creams. So just, again, thinking outside the box, but just stretching and really relying on the plant foods, the spices. But of course, the protein question, it's one of these things where, everyone's asked about protein. And it's one of these things where I think we're obsessed with protein just the way we're obsessed with all these other single nutrients. I don't walk around thinking about how much protein I'm getting every day. I just don't. And I know I'm fine because I'm eating a variety of foods, and I'm relying on the higher protein plant foods. There's protein in all plant foods, period, full stop. There's protein in all plant foods. Protein is made up of amino acids, and amino acids are in all foods. And our bodies don't care where we're getting those amino acids from. It does care in the sense that there's a lot of evidence in terms of the negative effects of animal protein. It cares in that sense. But in terms of like, are we getting enough, and do we have to combine and complement? Like, no, if we're eating a variety of foods, we're getting amino acids from all the different foods, and our bodies are smart enough to basically assimilate all of those amino acids into the complete protein that we need, as long as we're not eating potato chips all day long, right? So eating a variety of foods is going to really contribute to that. But then, of course, there are foods that are higher in protein and have all the amino acids in them more than others. So things like beans and lentils and legumes and nuts and seeds, they're going to have higher amounts, and beans, and that includes foods like tofu and tempeh because they're soybean based. So I just think we need to just let go a little bit, and again, having just like unlimited amount of animal protein is not a good thing. Like, it's just not good for our body. So it's not like we should be trying to get as much animal protein as possible, even though it's what we've been taught, which is unfortunate because it's detrimental. But so when you switch to plant-based, you might actually get less protein, but that's not necessarily a bad thing because you're getting all the protein you need, but we're eating so much more than we need in animal foods because we're so obsessed with it that it's quite detrimental. So, most people obsess over protein, but most people couldn't tell you what protein deficiency looks like because we don't have protein deficiency. Most people know people with heart disease or on blood cholesterol lowering medications or blood pressure lowering medications, or they know people with cancer. No one knows anyone with kwashiorkor, which is the scientific term for protein deficiency. We don't have kwashiorkor specialists. We don't have kwashiorkor wards in our hospitals, but we do have cardiovascular wards. We have cancer wards. We have diabetes wards. So protein deficiency is just, it's not an issue. It's not to say that we shouldn't make sure we're getting all of the nutrients we need by eating a variety of plant foods, but we're just misguided in thinking we have to obsess so much over it, or certainly thinking that we can't stop eating animal products because we're worried about kwashiorkor. It's not something to worry about.
Good point. All the way back in episode 41, I interviewed Susanna McGee, and she was the one who first opened my eyes to this. She's a raw vegan athlete, and her body, she's gorgeous. By the way, she looks like half her age. And she lives in LA near Venice Beach, and she is a tennis pro and trains people on tennis all day long. So she's out there in the sun, sweating it away and thwacking those tennis balls, rippling with muscle. She is just so fit, and we all want to look like Susanna McGee. And when she explains what she eats, she's a raw vegan, so she doesn't even cook her food. So she's eating basically salads and fruit and nuts all day long, and she gets enough protein. And that freaked me out. Like, that really pulled me out of the matrix and made me see that, made me start questioning my belief system around nutrition and around diet and what I've been raised to believe. I had two very big meat eater parents. My dad died of heart disease in his, I believe he was late 50s, early 60s. And my mom died at age 55 of cancer. And, I'm not saying it's like 100% because of meat, but I'm just, they both were really big meat eaters, and never once did we consider not eating meat. It was not even, so how I was raised was meat is the centerpiece of every meal. And then there were, possibly some sides, right? And so to go from this belief system, just because this is how I was raised, to then flip it around and go, well, the centerpiece of my meal today is broccoli, and what could I make to complement my broccoli? It's had me have to go back and reprogram myself. But I think that's healthy for all of us to do, not only around food, but look at what are the childish or the childlike decisions that we made around money, around relationships, around self-worth. What decisions did we make growing up because we modeled our parents and our grandparents, and we modeled what was presented to us? And look at our belief system, and it's okay to go against the grain. It's okay to completely try something new. Because like I said before, if we want to have radical health, we need to make radical changes. Now, what about gas? A lot of people, when they start a vegan diet, or at least increasing, let's say for some people, what they need to do first before they completely give up meat is they just need to try some meatless meals, and they need to increase all the plant-based foods in their diet just to see the health benefits there. And then they come up against a lot of gas because their body's just not used to digesting all of it. Do you have any recommendations for that? Should they get a digestive enzyme? Should they make sure they soak their food or cook their food in a certain way?
Yeah, so it depends. So one of the things that happens, especially with something like beans. Now, again, this is what I was saying about expecting changes, but not judging those changes as something negative. It's just different, right? Now, gas and bloating can be negative. I get that, but that doesn't mean it's going to last forever. And there's a reason for it. So what happens, especially with beans, and as people move from animal-based to plant-based, and they're eating more beans and legumes and lentils, and I recommend it because they're really good. They're really good. But what's happening, there is a sugar in the beans. oligosaccharides is what they are. And so those are the sugar in beans that people can have a hard time digesting. And that's why people get gas and cramps and bloating. So one of the things that something like Beano, now I don't take Beano because Beano actually has gelatin, but there's a vegetarian version of Beano. It's called Beanzyme, I think I've seen. But the point is, what that does is that actually puts into your body, that's why you take a Beano right before you eat beans, puts into your body the enzyme that enables you to digest those sugars. And so there's nothing wrong with doing that. It's just putting into your body the enzyme that helps you digest those sugars. And so that will reduce the gas and the cramping. The other thing, though, is as you continue to eat beans, your body becomes more accustomed to eating beans and you start to just have less gas and bloating. Now, everybody's different. Some people find that they have less gas and bloating, with chickpeas versus black beans versus kidney beans. You just kind of test it out yourself. But taking something like the Beano will help. Also, it's one of the reasons that canned beans, people tend to do a little better with canned beans because they tend to be very well soaked, just however they're doing it commercially. So they tend to have a better experience. However, make sure that you strain out the liquid that the beans are sitting in, because those sugars are all in there. So so when you open the can of beans, make sure you rinse them, strain them under water. It's also an argument for you can soak your beans more, even if you're using the pressure cooker, because even if you're using a pressure cooker, you can soak the beans first. It'll be even less time once you finally cook them, but you don't have to. However, if you find that that's better, soaked beans, same thing. When you make if you do this without a pressure cooker, when you make your beans from scratch, obviously first you're soaking them. Before you cook those beans, make sure you change out that water, because again, all of the oligosaccharides are in that water. So when you soak your beans 8 hours, then you're ready to cook them, strain out that water, put new water in, and then cook them, and you'll have less of the gas and bloating.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Now, the links to your books and your website are going to be in the show notes of today's podcast. I'm on your website right now. And I love the quote right on the front. Don't do nothing because you can't do everything. Do something, anything. Mm. So I love that you point that out, because the vegan seems to a lot of people like an extreme, and they're like, well, I can't do that 7 days a week, so I'm not going to do any of it.
Right.
And I like that you bring this up. It's not listen, like vegan is sort of like the end of the marathon, right? If you imagine, and you've never run, so you've got to start somewhere. Like start with a plant-based meal. Then start with the meatless Mondays, and then try maybe a 7-day challenge, and then try a 30-day challenge. I mean, my husband is in an extreme. He just like switched. The light bulb went on, and he went, no animals ever again. And for him, it was a long time coming, because he won't even kill spiders for me. Like, I love my husband, but he won't hurt anything. He is such a lover. If he goes over to your house, like if you have pets, all your pets, even the ones that are afraid of people, will be on top of him. And he is 6'7". He's this gentle giant, and he sits in the living rooms of strangers. Like, we go to a new person's house, and people are amazed. Their cat, who always hides from people, is on top of him. Their dogs that are afraid of people is on top of him. So he's just like an animal lover, and animals and children too. Like, children just gravitate towards him. So he's just this lover of everyone, won't kill spiders for me. And I thought that was really like, how dare you? You're my husband. You're supposed to protect me. We joke about it, because I've done a few years of martial arts. And so he jokes that if we ever got into an altercation, he'd be standing behind me, because I'd be protecting him. But he's 6'7", so no one will mess with him.
Oh my God.
So he doesn't hurt anything. And it was really, for years, it was sort of, it didn't mesh well with his psyche, that he was a part of a system that caused harm to animals when he loved all living beings so much. And then he started hearing all the episodes I was doing with these experts talking about the benefits of avoiding meat and the benefits of eating a plant-based diet. And also hearing that the frequency of dead meat is about 4 hertz, right? But plants can be 300 hertz. And so it just makes sense. Fill your body with high frequency foods, and don't eat foods that are low frequency. Don't eat dead, rotting flesh. And so he just switched, right? Just like that. But for other people like me, it's more of a marathon. It's more of just one step at putting one foot in front of the other, and just figuring out how to do the next meal, how to do the next Meatless Monday, how to do the next, 30-day challenge, how to switch out, cow dairy products for non-cow dairy products, just one step at a time. So if we can choose one little thing to do that's manageable, like you're saying on your website, just do something. And then one day, all those little tiny somethings are going to add up to something really big. Now you've written a lot of books. Which book? So you've got would you say that the beginner, the on being vegan, or it was the 30-day vegan challenge was the best one for just starting and just doing something and doing these little changes, tips
Definitely.
and tricks for doing little changes?
30-day. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
30-day vegan challenge is just a great place to start.
Great. Now you have a book coming out, another book coming out. I want to talk about your book coming out. Can we pre-order it? I know it's coming out next year. Tell us more about what we learned from this book that's coming out.
Yes, I'm still writing it. So it's slated to come out next year. But yes, I have a deadline in just a month, and it's quite consuming. I'm very excited about this book. So you mentioned my website. It's a lot easier to tell people to go to joyfulvegan.com rather than my name, because it's a very long name. But also because that is really what I talk about a lot, are the joy that comes with living according to your values. And so this book is called The Joyful Vegan: Everything You Need to Stay Vegan in a World That Wants You to Eat Meat, Dairy, and Eggs. So what this book really focuses on is a lot of the social aspects. It's a lot of just, again, recalibrating kind of what it means to, kind of re-examine where we came from, what we were taught, the conditioning, all of it from our families, from the industries, and kind of first understanding what is this thing called willful blindness, and what is this cognitive dissonance, and why do we struggle so much? Because the food is the easy part. That really is the easy part. A lot of the struggle for most people has to do with the social aspects. And as I said, not only challenging your own identity, also thinking that your vegan identity, if that is indeed what you take on, and a lot of people do, because it becomes such a part of, because it's such a reflection of their belief system, then it feels like it's also butting up against other identities, whether it's our cultural identity or a family identity or our masculine identity, right? Or our identity as a mother or whatever it is. So we feel that it butts up against those identities. So I talk a lot about that. So one of the things I did, several years ago, after doing this work for a long time and hearing from a lot of people around the world, I started seeing threads through everybody's story after they became vegan. So, I guide people through the process of becoming vegan in the 30-day vegan challenge. The Joyful Vegan is really about what happens after you become vegan, and all of this stuff that we all kind of experience in different, there are common threads, even though the details might be different. So for instance, I talk a lot about this process being an awakening. You're really kind of waking up to your compassion, your desire to be healthy, et cetera. And so you're seeing the world through a different lens, and that kind of rocks your world a little bit, and it rocks the world of everybody around you because of their own fears about what it's going to mean for them, for your relationship, who you're going to be, et cetera. So you're also looking through the world at the world through a different lens in terms of what you know now. And so it's overwhelming to realize, wait a second, all these years I've been eating this food that was really contributing to harm, myself, sickness and disease, but also the harm of animals. So you're really raw and you see things very differently. So I talk about this whole process. And what I did was, after years of getting these letters from people and just seeing all of these common threads, I identified what I call the 10 stages of what happens when you stop eating meat, dairy, and eggs. And the first one is the voracious consumption of information. You kind of, you make this change, you make this decision. You're like, how could, wow, oh my God, I never knew this before. And so you start bearing witness and validating everything you just learned, right? So you watch documentaries, you read books, you read health books, you start to understand nutrition, you read and watch and consume everything you possibly can, because you can't believe you didn't know before. Mm-hmm. And that's something that we all experience. You get this enthusiasm and this excitement But I also talk in every one of these chapters where I'm identifying these stages, how to move through the stage so you don't get stuck in the stage. So in this case, I also talk about self-care, because as you're consuming all of this information, especially for those of us who are motivated by the ethics and the animals, we do watch a lot of documentaries, and we might get involved with direct rescue, et cetera, and that can be overwhelming on our psyches as well. And so self-care is really important. It's an important balance to bearing witness. So the second stage after that is, I have to think now what the second stage is, but it would be, I think it's guilt, but it's really more guilt. It's really more remorse than guilt, because that's the stage where you say, how could I not have known? How could I have been a part of this? How could I have contributed to things that are antithetical to my values? And so you deal with the remorse of having once hurt animals. I hear from parents who deal with the remorse of, oh my God, I now conditioned my kids to eat animals, and changing them from that habit is really hard, as we all know. So there's that kind of remorse, but there's also the guilt we deal with when we're vegan, that we think we have to be perfect. We think we have to represent veganism perfectly. We think we have to eat perfectly. And that's one of the things I really talk about a lot, which is reflected a little bit in that quote that you read from my website, which is the biggest mistake people make is they think being vegan is an end. They think that's the goal, that's the end point, when really it's a means to an end. So if you look at being vegan as an end, you're hung up on perfection and purity and ideology in some cases. But if you understand that being vegan is a means to reach your goals, whether it's health, whether it's not hurting animals, whether it's helping the earth, then you relax and realize that it is just a means to actually accomplish your goals, rather than, than the end itself. So I talk about that a lot in the guilt part, and to understand that. There's also coming out and telling our family and friends, and kind of navigating the social aspects of our being vegan in the world we live in, our coworkers, our businesses, et cetera. There's the anger that a lot of people experience. How could I not have known, and how could I have been part of this? But now, why won't everybody else change around me? I don't understand. Doesn't everybody else see what I see? And so anger is definitely a part of the process. But so is evangelism. I talk about vegangelism, which, because we're so enthusiastic and excited about telling people, we do tell everybody, but also people just, people joke that vegans talk about being vegan all the time. Really, it's because people ask you all the time. I think people are very curious about why you're vegan. And so if your enthusiasm can be taken for proselytizing, when that's not always the case. So I go through each of these stages and really just give a name to the experience that people have living in a world that wants you to keep eating meat, dairy, and eggs. I mean, we are in a culture that's set up to make sure that we're conforming and doing what everybody else is doing. Everyone has a stake in us staying asleep. Everyone does. Our parents don't want us to change because they don't know what it's going to do for the relationship. Same thing with all of our family members. The industries don't want us to change because they want to keep making money off of us, et cetera, et cetera. We're afraid to change because we don't know what it's going to look like on the other side, and we're afraid of the unknown. So just naming the fact that there are challenges, but that doesn't mean that has to overwhelm us. Those challenges don't have to dictate what we do. So really guiding people to being a joyful vegan and staying vegan, because I think one of the reasons that a lot of people go back is because of the lack of social support, but also the lack of their own kind of owning, the change they're making, and feeling really confident about it and feeling really good about it. And understanding that it's not about perfection, that it is about reflecting your values. And it's an imperfect world, and we're never going to be able to do this perfectly, but just anything we do moving in that direction is a good thing. So that's what the new book is, The Joyful Vegan.
I love it. I love it. I'm looking forward to reading it. You made me sort of go down memory lane in the last year, consuming I would stay up at night on YouTube, watching video after video after video after video, and even Instagram, watching all the videos on Instagram of people making these really cool vegan recipes. And my mind would be constantly blown. I'm like, I didn't know I could do that or make that, or that looks so delicious. I can't wait to try it. And then I would try these recipes out on my family, and even my son, 3-year-old, has been loving it. I made like the coolest sushi. It was riceless sushi. Not that there's anything bad with rice, but it was a raw sushi. So taking broccoli and grating it and then mixing it, like mashing it with, so the broccoli basically is the rice, and mashing it with avocado, which made it stick together, and then cutting up some thin slices of vegetables like carrots and all that good stuff, and then putting that down on the nori sheet and rolling it and then cutting it up. And my son, who he likes vegetables, but sometimes I just, he's sort of, he's a 3-year-old. He's, he's going to fight me on it. Right. And he fights me on it. And then if we put the grocery bag beside him in the car on the way home, and by the time we get home, he's eaten the entire bushel of kale. Like, so he'll surprise me. He'll always eat his vegetables when like I don't like notice. So I think it's a game for him. But he ate so many rolls, so many little pieces of this sushi, which was full of raw broccoli, and it was so delicious and crunchy and nutritious. And so just like seeing these fun new recipes to try, I was consuming for weeks at a time all these YouTube videos, and getting so excited about it. I found there in my area, because I live just outside of Seattle, there's Vegetarians of Washington, and so I joined them. We went to their conference, we went to their monthly meetings, joined all the vegan and vegetarian Facebook groups, just so I felt like I had a group of people that I could just learn from and lean on and hear their trials and tribulations, just like your book kind of helps sum up all of the issues that people go through as they explore this lifestyle. And I found that really helped, that joining the Facebook groups and joining the groups and surrounding myself with people who are like-minded allowed us to feel like we're not so odd. We're not the black sheep anymore, feeling there a sense of community. So I thought that was really cool that you brought that up.
Yeah, and that's one of the stages too, is the community, is finding community, finding like-minded people. It's absolutely what communication, sounds like community. Communication is also another one, is just kind of learning how to be able to just say, your truth and, explain it. And so you don't feel that you have to apologize for it. You don't have to feel self-effacing. You don't have to feel embarrassed or apologetic, just being proud and just, also learning to say what you want to say and then stopping and not being attached to what you're right. So just kind of saying, your truth and then stepping back. So all of those things, and absolutely what you're talking about in that first stage, recipes, cookbooks, it's when you buy your first cookbooks and you're excited about trying new things. So it's really exciting. I think it's going to be really helpful. And I've done a podcast series, so I think people are, I know that it's really resonated with a lot of people who've already heard it. So I'm really excited about this book. I think it's going to help because, one of the reasons I'm writing it is because there is a high rate of recidivism for people who stop eating meat, dairy, and eggs. A high number of people go back to eating meat, dairy, and eggs. And one of, a lot of the reasons they'll tell you is like they didn't have a community, they didn't have like-minded people, they didn't have support. It was around convenience also and the food, and that's easily solvable. But I don't think there's enough out there on really just validating all of the social aspects and what it feels like to be, to be vegan in a non-vegan world, because it's such a small, because there's so many misconceptions and stereotypes and stigmas and so just kind of navigating that, but doing it joyfully. So that you can feel confident and remain vegan if that's what you want.
Awesome. Excellent. Now you have a conference coming up. Tell us about this conference.
I think you might be seeing a conference from that's in the past. It was already in August. Oh. So I wonder if it's still up on the website that hasn't been taken down. But I have been doing a conference every year called Compassion in Action, and just along the lines of what we just talked about, just really guiding people to find their voice and find their place once they make this change, especially for people who are, more advocacy oriented. What is fun that I think we can just mention is one thing that I've been doing for the last several years is we've created a whole slew of vegan trips that we've been organizing. So we started what's called CPG, for my name, CPG Vegan Trips. And we've been traveling around the world with people who want to join us. It's usually about 20 to 25 people. And they've been selling out like crazy. So we've got one coming up in France this year, in Alsace, a real Christmas holiday kind of festival festive, very, very, very Christmassy, and going to Christmas markets and just making the most of the winter season in that really beautiful part of France and Alsace. We have 2 back-to-back trips to Rwanda next year. They sold out like instantly. And we have another Alsace trip. Next year, we've been to Thailand, we've done Vietnam, and we've got some really fun trips coming up, going back again to Africa in 2020 and back to France again. So they've been wonderful, and it's a wonderful way for people to just travel again with like-minded people, not have to think about the food. These are 5-star luxury trips, and we really make the most of the cultures we're in, but we also go to animal sanctuaries and really celebrate the work that is being done in different countries to protect and rescue animals from different situations, depending on where we are. So they've been really fun. So if people are interested in just checking out what we have to offer, they can either link from my website, Joyful Vegan, or they can go to cpgtrips.com and they can see the trips that are coming up.
Excellent. Yes, I think that because I book so far out in advance, my speakers have to book so many months in advance. It says upcoming conference in the show notes that I was given, but going to the website compassioninactionconference.com, it does have a big button to order the conference videos from August of 2018. And how would people stay in touch with you if they wanted to get news and updates on your trips and on your future conferences? You say you do these conferences every year. So how should they just go to your website, Joyful Vegan, and get on your email list? How would they do that?
That's right. So just go to Joyful Vegan and you'll see the mailing list kind of pop up there, but it's also on the homepage. And then also, really, it's people want to kind of stay in touch. I'm most active on Instagram if they're on social media, and I share a lot of, one thing I've been doing lately are just these 1-minute videos that have been really helpful for people, just kind of encapsulating a particular point, idea, thought in 1-minute videos, because it's all you get on Instagram. And people have been going nuts. They love them. They're sharing them. And they're just really helpful to kind of help them find their own voice and ways to articulate the ideas that I'm sharing. So Instagram is a place that I've been really active. If people want to follow me there too.
Excellent. And it's at Joyful Vegan, which is easy to remember. Wonderful. Well, has been such a pleasure having you on the show. You talk about that stage that people go through when they first go vegan. They consume all this media and all these books. I bet they buy every one of your books because they're all amazing.
Yeah, that is. And actually, especially my podcast, I've been doing a podcast for 13 years. It's called Food for Thought. And that is one thing that happens is people find the podcast and they absolutely serial listen to it and voraciously consume it. So they go all the way back to the very first episode, which was back in 2006. And they start listening to one episode after another. So that's one of the ways also. And then, they get my books. And I've been doing this long enough that I'm just really grateful to be able to work in a lot of different mediums and really guide people for whatever reason, regardless of why they're coming to it. I want to help them throughout, through the process, through the transition, and just really help them, find their way and be confident and stay that way. So I'm really grateful to be able to do this. And thank you for having me on, Ashley. And thank you so much for sharing this good news. It's really so important for people to just get new information and make some helpful changes.
Absolutely. It's been such a pleasure. Looking forward to your upcoming book coming out. And thank you for coming on the show and sharing this great information. Of course, the links to all your books and your upcoming book and your conferences and everything, all those links are going to be in the show notes of today's podcast at learntrail.com. Is there anything that has been left unsaid or anything that you'd really like to make sure you share with the listeners to wrap up today's show?
No, I feel like we really covered a lot. I mean, I usually really end up with that thought of that it's not about being perfect. You kind of alluded to this before about radical changes. I always say that everybody wants to make a difference, but I think we forget that in order to make a difference, we have to do something different. So just making some changes, it's a positive thing. Don't be afraid. I think the biggest thing that people are afraid of is the unknown. They don't know what's on the other side of it. So trust. stay close to people you can get good information from. Obviously, you are one of those people. This is why I do this work, to really just kind of guide you through it. Stay open and embrace the adventure. It's called living. When we stop learning, we're we're not alive anymore. I mean, we stay alive and vibrant by growing and learning and evolving all the time. So just be open and never say never.
Wonderful. I love it. Yes. If you feel stuck in life, if you feel like you're in a rut, if you feel like you're really not fully living your life, jump in to learn something. That's why I joined IIN and did their online program to become a health coach, because the learning was amazing. That's why I love doing these interviews, because the learning's amazing. That's why I love to read these books and go check out other people's podcasts and watch the YouTube videos, just consuming the new content and then trying it on and then actually doing it and challenging our own belief systems, going against the norm and trying these new ways of being. Makes you feel so alive. It's like jumping out of an airplane. Like, when I go, oh my gosh, I got my kid to eat a raw vegan meal. I can't believe it. I got my 3-year-old to eat a raw vegan meal and he loved it. Like, it's just, try something new, and it's exhilarating and it's so much fun. And, not everything's going to work out. I've burnt many a new dish and it's okay.
Right.
A lot of people burn food and then they go, I'm not a good cook. I can't cook. And they stop and they freeze. And you should celebrate when you burn food. Celebrate that you figured out a way of not doing it, because it's sort of like Edison and the light bulb. It's like, 1,000 times you got to burn those dishes 1,000 times to perfect it. And it's okay if you burn it twice. You'll remember, to lower the heat or to check it more often or stir it. Like, you will figure it out, but you have to keep trying and keep challenging yourself and keep moving forward. And then you'll feel alive again. And that's I love that you brought that up, because sometimes we can use that medium of food to help us heal things in our life emotionally and mentally. If we're emotionally and mentally stuck in life, we can challenge ourselves, because it's safe to try something new in food, then sort of opens us up to this idea that we can try new things in life also, and in other aspects of life. So let's do it. Let's just try something new. Let's do something small. Have a meatless meal, have a meatless Monday, try the 30-day challenge, whatever you're comfortable with, or maybe uncomfortable, maybe get a little uncomfortable and challenge ourselves. We'll be so happy that we shifted our life and learned some new things and tried on some new things, because there's nothing but joy that's available here. That's why your name is Joyful Vegan, right? There's nothing but joy that's available at the end of this journey. So thank you so much. Can't wait to have you back on the show. The next time you have more books or more to share, I'd love to have you back.
Love it. Thank you so much, Ashley.
Hello, Trail Seekers. This is a little announcement mini episode. I have some really exciting news for you. It's all about Black Friday and Cyber Monday deals in the holistic health space that I know you'll definitely want to know about. So drum roll, please. Here are 5 really awesome Black Friday and Cyber Monday deals in the holistic health space that I know you definitely want to consider taking advantage of. The magnesium foot soak, and you don't have to just soak your feet. You can take the concentrated magnesium soak and use it in the bath. I often do, especially with my son, and a lot of listeners have let me know that it's very effective to have their kids put it in their kids' bath, and they really do notice that their kids calm down. There's one listener who told me that her 2 children with ADD are actually calming down. They're going to bed on time. That's what I noticed too, is that my son was able to easily go to bed on time and not fight me when he goes to sleep. It used to take us an hour of fighting him to get him to sleep, and now he just says, okay, Tropholite, it's time to go to bed. So the magnesium soak is amazing. It's by Living the Good Life Naturally, and she already gives us a 10% discount, and she covers half of the shipping when we order from her. So livingthegoodlifenaturally.com. Well, she informed me that she's doing a big Black Friday special for the Learn True Health listeners, and it's going to be announced in our Facebook group. So you can join the Facebook group, and I'll announce exactly what the special is, but I'll tell you now, it's worth buying a few bottles for yourself and for some loved ones as holiday gifts. Should you wish to try the magnesium soak for yourself, or if you already have tried it and you want to restock up, wait until Friday. You can still use the LTH coupon code. She's just going to change the discount to be greater and give us free shipping. How cool is that? So those are for people in the United States. For those who are not in the United States, know that her team is working to open up international shipping in the new year. So in the quarter one of the new year, she hopes to be able to provide international shipping for her amazing magnesium soak. All right, so that's Living the Good Life Naturally. You still use coupon code LTH. Just go to livingthegoodlifenaturally.com on Friday. Use the coupon code LTH and you'll get an even greater discount plus free shipping. The details of which will be laid out in the Facebook group on Friday. Now, all the details to everything I'm sharing in this little mini episode, the announcement, the news episode, it's going to be in the show notes of this episode. So you can click on details of this episode, whichever podcast format you're listening, whether you're listening through iTunes or Podbean or Spotify or Stitcher, whatever you're listening, however you're listening to this mini episode, you can go to the show notes and collect all of the links and everything there. I'll also post all these details as one big post in the Facebook group. The next one I want to let you know about is my anxiety program. I decided to do a big discount. I'm giving over 80% off. So it is affordable for absolutely everyone. I want everyone who's experiencing anxiety to use these tools to end their anxiety. So my program is a month-long program where every day you're given 1 or 2 videos. Now you don't have to, you could finish it in 3 months. You can take your time. You don't have to do a video every day. You do it at your own pace. I've had amazing feedback. I've had people tell me that they have had sleepless nights for years and years, that anxiety has wreaked havoc on their lives and caused them to not be able to sleep throughout the night. And halfway through the program, what the common feedback I get is that people have the first restful sleep where they sleep through the whole night, they wake up refreshed, they wake up without anxiety in years. And it's really exciting when people get their lives back. So if you have any anxiety, and sometimes people don't realize it is anxiety, but if you have worry, racing thoughts, procrastination, feelings of doom or feelings of hopelessness, then you definitely want to consider taking my program. I also provide a money-back guarantee, a 30-day money-back guarantee. And so go to the links, like I said, in the show notes of the podcast or in the Facebook group to purchase the Free Your Anxiety course at 80% off for this holiday special. The next really exciting discount is I talked to Sunlighten Saunas and I asked them to give us a special price for our wonderful listeners. And they said, absolutely. They're running some amazing Black Friday and Cyber Monday deals. And they're giving the Learn True Health listeners on top of those deals, whatever deals they're giving, whatever amazing specials they're running for all the customers out there, Learn True Health listeners can take an additional $200 off any sauna and free shipping. And normally shipping is about $600 for these units. So they're giving you $200 off and free shipping on top of whatever special they're running during Black Friday and Cyber Monday. Just mention the Learn True Health podcast with Ashley James to get that extra awesome deal. So that's Sunlighten Sauna. My sauna is heating up right now. After I'm done recording this and posting it, I'm going to jump in the sauna with my husband because it is so relaxing and so amazing. A great way to de-stress and detoxify. The next really fun special I want to tell you about is the most affordable special I've ever heard. It is a single $1. So if you have $1, you can go to $pain-cream.com. I just posted an interview about it earlier this week. $Pain Cream For $1, they will send you 5 packets of this sample cream. Now, if you don't have any pain, I still urge you to get it because you may bump into someone in your life that does have pain. And it's such a cool gift to give to them and see if it helps them. If it does, it's such a game changer to take someone out of pain or to help reduce their pain naturally. It's really great for when you have headaches. You can rub it on your neck and your temples. If you have stress or tension, muscle tension, it's also really helpful. It's really great for arthritis and plantar fasciitis, any kind of pain that also has to do with inflammation. So definitely check it out, dollarpaincream.com. Now, IIN, the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, is hosting a wonderful sale. I've actually never seen them do this. They're providing $1,800 off their health coach training program. I took their health coach training program back in 2015, 2016. It's a year-long program that you can do part-time online, and I loved it. If you've been a long-time listener, you have heard me talk about it. It's really life-changing. And if you're someone who loves personal growth and really digs these podcasts, you would want to do it for the personal growth alone. I would have just done the entire IIN training program for my own personal growth. And I'm so excited that I also get to utilize everything I learned to help others. So it really is a fantastic program. And if you've wanted to augment what you do and become a health coach on the side or do it for your own personal growth, or if you'd love to jump right in and become a health coach, then call IIN. So you can just Google IIN or the Institute for Integrative Nutrition and give them a call. Mention, again, the Learn True Health podcast with Ashley James because they give our listeners a special. So it's $1,800 off. Or they also are providing a different package that provides $1,000 off, plus a tablet, plus a bunch of really cool discounts, like $300 Amazon gift card, I think, and then there's a $100 Thrive card. It's like a whole package. So just give them a call and tell them that you wanted the special Black Friday sale that's going on this week. If you've been on the fence about becoming an IIN health coach, definitely now's the time to join because that is the biggest discount I have ever seen them give. Last but not least, there is Dr. Z. I had him on the show a few episodes ago about essential oils. I love his stuff. I've actually done some of his classes. I have his book. It's really well done. Now, I've been into essential oils since I was about 15 years old, and I can tell you that his training is really well done, and I've read a lot of essential oils books. So he has 5 different classes that he is giving huge discounts. For example, his Essential Oils for Abundant Living Masterclass is 95% off. His Toxic-Free Healthy Home Makeover class is 95% off. That makes it, I think, $27. So all of them are very low priced, which is great. So if you're looking at learning more about essential oils, then you'll want to go to the show notes, either in this episode or jump into the Facebook group and find the links that I'm going to post there, which give you the deep discounts for this week only. These prices go from November 23rd until midnight, Monday, November 26th. He also has Beat Cancer God's Way for $47. It's 89% off. And the Essential Oils Club Lifetime Membership for $97. That is a new product offering. He's never offered it at that price. It's a lifetime membership for that price. So really cool stuff about essential oils. He doesn't recommend any brands, so whatever brand you use is fine. He gives some indications as to what to look for in a really good quality brand, but because he doesn't align himself with any company, he can just focus on the education piece and teaching us all the wonderful things we have to learn about essential oils and their healing properties. So wonderful. Thank you so much for being a Learn True Health listener. When I kept seeing all these great deals this week, I knew that I wanted to tell you guys about it. Please let your friends and family know about these discounts. These are all tools that'll help us to gain our health back. The magnesium soak is phenomenal. It's such a game changer. I have a friend who has chronic migraines, and she started doing the 30-day challenge where she soaked for an hour every day with the magnesium soak. And I believe she's been doing it for a week now. And since she started, her migraines stopped, and she hasn't had one since. And that is a big deal when someone is in that much pain. But what I have heard consistently is people have more energy and are getting better sleep. And everyone can use that, especially around the holidays. So when thinking about holiday gifts, consider giving a gift, whether it's these specials or something else. Consider giving a gift that supports your friends and family and loved ones and coworkers and your whole community. Think about what could help them, what could build them up. So instead of buying someone a box of chocolates, think about what kind of healthy gift can I give someone that I care about? Maybe some essential oils, right? Maybe a wonderful book. Think about something that's going to lift them up and build them up and support their body's ability to heal itself. It feels so good when we support our friends and family in gaining even better health. Happy holidays. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving for all my American friends and for everyone who's listening. Whatever holidays you celebrate in the next 2 months, I hope you have an amazing time with your loved ones. And consider this week taking a few moments to write out or think about, what are you truly grateful for? What are you so thankful for? Even a few minutes of focusing on gratitude can uplift you, increase your endorphins, and decrease your stress. Enjoy and have a wonderful rest of your day.